Hey everyone, and welcome to the next edition of the Snapchat. As always, I'm joined today by none other than Cozy Snap. Cozy, it's been a wild month in Marvel Snap. A lot has changed. We got a patch coming out tomorrow, but one could hope that maybe in the patch, some of the villains of Marvel Snap might get dealt with. Now, when we talk about villains, Cozy, we're not talking about like the bad guys. What are we talking about?
Dude, it feels like we've built up like a movie, like Galactus was our biggest woe. Heck, I was talking about Destroyer being at a 16. I'm like, that was like the early plot. We're like, oh, the villain's so bad. And then we kept going. Galactus was the most hated. And now we're like full-blown Infinity War. We've got like 6 villains now. We have a lot of cards that people hate and Snap. It's the ones that people are on Twitter smashing their phones, their keyboards for. And it feels like we have more than we ever have, which I think is good to share the blame, but obviously bad in player experience, bud. So yeah, we're going to be breaking down the villains here. So let's kick it off. What do you think is the biggest villain?
I mean, I'm going to go off and say that I think the biggest villain right now is Werewolf by Night.
Really?
Werewolf by
The biggest
Night,
one
yes.
is Werewolf. No way.
Listen, no. He's not like the most irritating. I don't think he's the one that people complain about the most and are angry the most about. I think there's another one that we'll talk about momentarily. Little fart cloud maybe we'll talk about. But there is definitely Werewolf by Night is definitely a villain here because like it is literally in every top performing shell. It comes to the point where like if you want to make a very good deck with Marvel Snap, you put Werewolf by Night in it and then just put whatever the hell else around it. Like it just doesn't matter. It literally makes every archetype better.
Yeah, I think he's here. We'll go here. I had Goliath like ready to go, but we'll come back to him.
He was the other one
I'm ready to go.
Too.
But let's talk Werewolf. Now, I want to defend the card a bit, but also, of course, I think it is going to be adjusted. I don't think he's even in 1, 2, 3, 5 top. He's like probably number 4 on my list on the villain list. But for me, you kind of have to be good to play this card. You can't just be like a casual player. You need to know location spacing, and you need to know what lane you want him to end in and where Shang-Chi could land up. So I do think there's skill involved, like early bounce, if that makes sense. He's in a lot of lists, but he's not like Darkhawk level popular. He's in the top lists, and I get it in that sense. But I haven't gotten all that much complaints about him other than people don't have them.
You know what? I think that's part of it as well. Is I think that there's a lot of frustration in the community that people who are free to play is obviously like you're only getting a couple spotlight caches a month to some degree, right? For free to play players. So when they miss on the roll for the Werewolf by Night and he's literally in the top 5 highest win rate decks, it can be definitely frustrating. This has been a card, and when I talk about villains, this is a card I see lamented about a lot because it is in some of the most top performing shells, and of course like it just performs exceptionally well. And it's not about getting it to like over 20 power. At its baseline, like it is remarkably powerful, even if you don't really get it bouncing all that much. Like it's just such a good card. I don't know, it's really kind of reaching up. I think it probably gets touched up in the patch.
There's truly not a card that I feel the need to play on turn 3 more than the Wolf. Like there's other cards like you should be playing them here, like Mr. Negative on 4. Wolf, I'm like, it's 3. I gotta get him out. Like I gotta get him out now so that I can end up getting him higher. Or like Daily Bugle, I'm begging they don't get my Wolf whenever that happens. Yeah, I think he'll go down to like a 3-1. If they adjust the cost, it's a major nerf. If they adjust the power, I think he's fine because he's scaling to such crazy levels. You do have to give up lanes. You do have to give up location. The problem is not just Wolf. It's the flexible and powerful. Things like Forge being 1 cost is still mind-boggling. And the Nikos, it's those on reveals that are in every deck anyway. And then you have a card that synergizes now with all the decks. And I think that's what's really, it's like Darkhawk in his package. But if you have the cheap on reveals, it's going to be the same result,
Yeah, and as we said prior, like the cards that work well with Werewolf are just remarkable on their own. Like they're just very good cards, and it gets applied to so many different shells and so many different archetypes. Like even Bounce is remarkable with it, just so good because like all the cheap on reveals, like they just you bounce them back, and just Beast is an on reveal too. It's like Werewolf loves all of it, right? So it's really great. It's a fantastic card, but I think it is one of the newest villains of Marvel Snap, which is the headline here because it has emerged as an absolute banger card. And if you don't have it, you're definitely feeling it. So I understand that. Cozy, I'll let you kick off the one you had previously prepared, the ultimate villain of Snap right now.
Yeah. So what I did was I ranked the villains in my head of like how much people hate them versus play them. Like it blows my mind. Like I've done 3 Infinity Conquests, and like I have problems with where Loki's at, but I'm seeing people that complain about Loki to like a nauseum almost. Like it's all the time. And then they'll be like, "Oh, I got an Infinity Conquest win. Loki's too good right now," and they're like, "Oh, I hate it, but I played it." And it's like, well, you're contributing to why people hate the card, in my opinion. So if you hate it, I don't know why you would play it. But Alioth is one that everybody plays and everybody hates at the same time, right? Like you didn't get this card and you're not playing it. Alioth is at the top of the list. He's going to be such a tricky card ultimately to fix outside of keeping the on reveal and letting those reveal first. And then it's like almost an instant fix. And then he has like his uses, but he's not in every deck. He's definitely the top. He is the villain of villains, though, in Snap.
Yo, he's 100% like the ultimate villain. He's like the end boss right now. He's the final boss. Marvel Snap. Yeah. And like, honestly, his stats, though, are kind of surprising. His win rate's only 51%. Like, honestly, but his cube rate's really high because people are like, oh, I can win this game. We're going 8 cubes. And it's like, wait a minute. Like, yeah. Like you lose, I guess, right? And so like I think that's really frustrating people. But Cozy, what you said rings true. People are complaining about cards, but they're playing it themselves. The meta share of Alioth is 27%. 27%. There's nothing that comes close to it. It's just insane. Every single turn 6 is, does this lose to Alioth? And sometimes usually you are losing to Alioth because they've locked down a storm location. They got Professor X than the other. My gosh, Alioth is a problem.
You know those little reports they send out at the end of the season, like the season recaps? I wish there was a section of you left X many games and lost 200 cubes where you thought Alioth was going to be played, but the opponent didn't have it. I don't know how many cubes I've donated to being like, it's Alioth, I'm out. And that guy probably wasn't even playing or didn't top deck it, or the Loki player didn't copy it. You know what I mean? Like I've bowed out of so many games because of that.
I can see like Alioth like kind of like lingering in people's nightmares. Like this is like the PTSD card of Marvel Snap, where it's like you get hit with Alioth, you're like, no, like how did I not see that coming? And the worst part about it, like, listen, I've been caught off guard by Alioth before, and I do you know who I blame? I blame myself. I'm like, how did I not see Alioth coming? Like, I have to know better. I go on the Snapchat. I joke about how people don't even see Alioth coming. They should see Alioth coming. And then I'm here on Twitch TV. I go 8 cubes. Chat saying Alioth, Alioth, Alioth. And I'm just like, LOL, let's go. And boom, all my cards get destroyed unrevealed, right? Maybe I'm the one with the PTSD.
Well, it's like the old school way of the Shang-Chi, when he was just like the staple and it was the Shang-Chi doesn't exist. I can't tell you how many games where I'm like, roll it. Let's see it. He doesn't have it. There's no way, but also the satisfaction when like Sokovia gets rid of Alioth and you're like, I'm free from my shackles. Like I'm a free man. I can play, a fair game here. But yeah, I think Alioth, number 1 villain, no question. With number 2, buddy, being Loki, yeah?
Yeah, I definitely see Loki being a villain right now, but I'm going to say that I think Loki has been brought down quite a bit. And I think we've discussed him a few times already. His win rate's at 53%, 10% meta share. So like literally a third of the meta share of Alioth. Like, let's be honest, this is kind of crazy. The card is so fun to play. I wonder if you actually boost his stats, remove the -1 cost to make like Quinjet more of a mainstay, and he's fine. Like, I don't know, does he feel that bad?
Yeah, he's not going to stay. I guarantee, whether it's this or January, there's just no way. I don't see it just because of the way. It was like negative in beta. It's like the problem for future cards. And I think there's a lot with Loki happening that they don't want in every meta. And there's a way that we're close. Not really. But it doesn't take a lot to make him playable. A unique archetype that's super fun to play. That's not as bad as Mr. Negative. Or like, draw dependent, let's say. I don't know if you get rid of his cost. If you do get rid of his cost, you have to replace it with something, I think. You can't just have, like, you get your opponent's hand. I don't think that's good enough. I don't know. We're going to have to... Or they take him down to a 3, and that's what he does. He's going to get something happening. Again, I want to encourage people. This is one of those cards. I forgot which one took forever. I think it was Shuri. Took forever for them to fix. Because they were trying to find the way to make the card good, but different. And they did. They made that perfect. And I will not be... Like, I'm not going to be torching on my channel if I don't see him change this Tuesday, because I don't know if he will be. It may take longer for them to ultimately figure out how they make Loki feel good. So it could mean another season of Loki, but at the same time, it means you're not having a dead card at the end of the result.
Yeah, and I wonder what their statistics show from Loki across all MMRs and all ranks, how detrimental it actually is. Because, you hear a lot from, like, the high MMR, players that, like, they see a lot of Loki very often. And you do see these in tournaments, stuff like that. But my experience is that, like, Loki, I guess, can feel a little bit bad. It's like one of those feel bad cards where it's like, well, I'm losing against my own deck and they're playing it more efficiently, right? Because of the -1 cost. And so, like, yes, it's a powerful card, but I don't think it's as detrimental to the meta as it once was. It definitely has been brought down.
It's because of Alliath, though, a lot of the times. Like, I was playing a deck earlier this week, my Destroyer on Reveal deck, and I was like, oh, yeah, this version didn't have Alliath. So I got Loki'd, and my fear of Loki went down tremendously, right? Because I can outbeat that. I have decks that can outbeat Loki continually, but if they get the Alliath for 5, like, somebody commented, like, yeah, you destroy your deck, though. They just get to play Destroyer and more cards. I'm like, yeah, but they didn't set up for that. They don't have exactly what they need all the time. In their armor lane, yeah, they can use Mine, but they don't have the other cards adjacent with it. So Loki and Alliath together, Alliath is everywhere. And so that's the main core problem, right? It's the decks that you're building yourself, and then you're giving your opponent the keys, and they can ramp up with high power to it, right? So Loki, definitely, for me, number 2 villain. I'm curious if you can guess who I have at number 3.
I'm going to go with one of your favorite cards in Marvel Snap, one that I've never been a huge fan of, and it's Iron Lad. Iron Lad is currently in 21% of meta decks at a 53% win rate.
It comes back in the end of December, so that's good. I feel like you're going with cards that people wish they had, and they're pissed they don't have them. And in that case, that's another
that might be
topic.
Part of it. Maybe the comment section's informing us here.
It's a different topic. I don't think he's a villain by any means, but I get what you mean. Like, he's like the most missed out card. It was Jeff before Jeff came in Spotlights, right? He's impossible to replace. Jeff was impossible to replace. If I see people complain by the end of December or in January when you could have gotten him, that's on you, right? He's with Celine. Get him. Get that. We just talked about Celine being a great card that is on you. We've seen it now that Spotlights are good. They work. You can get cards that you want to get as long as you save for them. So for me, Iron Lad, I wouldn't classify as a villain, but I get the path that you're trying to take us down over here.
Yeah, I just think the stats kind of showcase the villain statistics, right? A 21% meta share. It's the only one that gets close to Alliath. It is really up there. Its win rate's fantastic, but you're right. It has a very unique ability in the game. It's irreplaceable. So there is a lot of frustration, I think, of people being like, hey, this is like one of those cards that people are like, hey, how do I replace Iron Lad? It's like, man, like, you really can't. Like, it's just what it does is so unique in Snap, right? So, like, yeah, maybe that informs it as well. I'm really interested in your spicy call. I got a couple of more spicy ones.
I'm just trying to think of like what I hate to lose to right now, and Iron Lad, it's so funny, man, because Iron Lad, I guess the way he curves out, I also like, he will always be like you nailed the Legion take, right? Like, Legion was your, like, whew, Alex got that right. Iron Lad, I made a video the day after. I think this is going to be one of the best cards in the game. I got shiz by everybody, right? Like, creators, the Twitter posts, like, he's not that great, overvalued, overhyped. Look where he's at now. And it was obvious at the time, right? Like, he copies a card to get 2 plays of him. And so that's why I love him. But yeah, my spicy take at 4 is going to be Pro X. And I think Pro X is in the same case as like Loki in some instances because of Alliath as the corner card. But I think Pro X is a big villain. Man, that thing slams down and you didn't play in that lane. You're pissed, whether it's Project Pegasus or not.
Yeah, and you know what? Pro X is definitely a villain right now. And unfortunately, Professor X activates the Alliath villainy as well. Like, they kind of go hand in hand. Professor X tags in Alliath, and Alliath comes in to drop the finishing, like, elbow drop from the top rope. That's basically what happens, right? So, like, yeah, Professor X is most certainly a villain. And we've talked about in the past how, like, yeah, we have more tools to deal with Professor X. Miss Marvel, we've got Jeff. But the problem is, all the decks that have Professor X have the same damn tools in them. So, like, oh, they played Professor X, but I can play Jeff, and then, like, their Jeff moves in. You're like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. They had Jeff too. Of course they had Jeff too.
Yep.
Why would you make a Professor X deck without Jeff? So it's like all the same tools are being applied, and it's like, oh, you know, what do you do about Professor X? I actually don't know what you do about Professor X. I don't know what you change about this card.
Yeah, because you can't make him a 5 unless you plan on doing more ways to boost the support around him. You can't make him a 5-2. And then unless you adjust the other cards, 5/3, I don't know. Yeah, he's a tough one to place, and I love him. I think Lockdown is a very important archetype in the game, and they need to keep it alive. We're going to have to see how they do that, right? Because I think it will be addressed maybe even Tuesday. You know, maybe we're talking, maybe someone's watching this on Wednesday, and it's already addressed. But, yeah, we'll have to see there. So, you know, I had Alioth, I had Loki, Pro X, and then I had a Nihilist. It has to be a Nihilist nowadays, I feel like. And mainly just because I just did the meta deck report. Top 3 decks. He's in 2 of them. Again, that Sentry plays massive. The way that he mind games you a bit is massive too. Like if you play a Sentry, they're like, he has it. He's got a Nihilist at this point. So I think a Nihilist was exactly what we thought he would be and come into the game as that role of a villain. And to me, those are the main ones. Like those are the ones to me that felt like the villains of Snap.
The last one I want to close with, Cozy, is I think a really spicy take, but I think when I say it, people are like, you know what? Yes, this is becoming a bit of a villain. And that is Scarlett Johansson, Black Widow. Black Widow is at a 14% meta share, only a 51% win rate in Infinite. However, the card is extremely frustrating to have played against you. It's being played in bounceless. So not only are you getting hit with 1 Widow's Bite, you're getting hit with 2, sometimes, more Widow's Bites. Widow's Bites everywhere. No cards being drawn. They're playing them with Korgs as well. So you draw a rock, you get Widow's Bite, and then they play their rock slide, and then they Widow's Bite you again, and then you play the Widow's Bites down, then you draw a rock. You're like, I have no cards, right? Black Widow has to be one of the emerging villains of Snap at a 2-drop.
Yeah, I love her, man. I think they made a dead card great, and I think, obviously the fact that she plays into the decks that are hot right now, Annihilus, whatnot. What's cool, too, is you could change her. If you don't want her in balance, if that's a problem, right? If that is, I don't think she's a big enough problem. I agree on the villain thing. I do. I don't think she's a big enough problem, but if she does become one, you could just make her a 3/2 with a -2 bite, and then you have that power. You still have the effect. You have the card draw that's limiting, but then you can't bounce her, or people aren't going to play her in bounce. So that, to me, that's interesting. It messes up the Darkhawk package enough. I hope they don't do it. I actually think she's fine right now. It's just in the current state of where we're at. But yeah, I mean, no question, dude. There's nothing worse than getting hit with this and you win Asgard and then nothing happens and you're like, great, I'm gonna log off. But yeah, Black Widow, man, yeah, that's a good call. Good call there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a card I've been really enjoying playing as well. So it's a good card. I think you're right. They did it right. They buffed it just enough to make it relevant, but it isn't quite meta breaking yet, but it is hell of annoying. So Black Widow does get a special mention on this list.
What I love though, dude, I just wanted to say what I love is Hydra, cut off 1 head, 2 will replace it, right? Hey, they can nerf these and then Havoc and Selena right around the corner. And I guarantee you Havoc has the potential to be up there as one of the most hated cards and Selene.
Ooh, I just realized something. On turn 3, you can Black Widow and Selene and turn the Widow's Bite into a -4.
Oh my God, you can.
I never thought of that.
Yeah, Widow. Oh, nasty. And it all works in bounce. It all is great in bounce, and so yeah.
Yeah, and then you just send a Green Goblin that's a -6 over. Oh my, that's a -10 turn play on 4.
Yep.
I never really thought of that before.
Bounce is going to be, I think, a villain of an archetype coming up soon. And it's because what we just talked about, Werewolf by Night, the cheap ones, the Fords, the Nikos. I think it's going to add up. I do. And, people were kind of poo-pooing on these one-cost car releases. They're not super fun. I know Nebula wasn't, loved when she came out. And now, we've gotten full circle where, something like Nico is, the must-have, right?
Yeah, Nico's been remarkable. And if you don't have Nico and you need some help because you're trying to build decks without Nico in them, well, we got a new feature coming. So in the December update, we're getting a whole bunch of stuff, including smart decks, the albums, and OTAs. Cozy, let's start with smart decks. Now, smart decks are going to be a new feature available to players. And I think this is actually a pretty big deal because one thing that we always joke about is there's a whole slew of players out there that are as casual as they come. People that are just enjoying Marvel Snap for the beautiful game that it is. And you know what? They don't have Iron Lad. They don't have Nico. And they're trying to build some functional decks. Cozy, this feature is going to allow them to do that.
I think this is a huge feature, right? When it was first announced, I remember thinking what a waste of resources. Why, what are we doing here? The fact that it can be anywhere from 1 card to 11 that it replaces, and it uses data that we don't even have access to, right? We're thinking untapped. Smart decks could tell us more about the meta, or it could be you know, good, not fantastic, but still like really good decks. The thought, looking at even the small snippet that we saw of it, dude, I'm thinking smart decks are incredible for casual players. The top of the top, right? If you don't watch YouTube, if you pick it up and you're at work and you love Silver Surfer, but you have no idea that Nova and Killmonger should go with Brood, right? Like, it's that kind of stuff that this is going to help. It's probably one of my favorite things to be released into the game because we've seen it. Snap has a massive casual audience. It's coming out at the perfect time around the holidays. I think it's, I think that's probably timely as well. And then it's great for people that don't have Iron Lad. What is the next card that's in the meta that's a great replacement here? Time will tell if they're going to have to tweak it up and make it work. If it's an Iron Lad and it gives you Jessica Jones, you're like, why the hell did it? You know what I mean? But we're going to have to see how it works. But from what we've seen, the snippets, great for casuals, incredible to see how it works. And just using AI and getting ahead of the curve in the gaming industry. Love to see it, bud.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. And I had a couple thoughts about it. The first thing you kind of just touched on, I really hope it's better than, oh, I don't have Iron Lad. Please recommend me a card. Oh, Vanilla Hulk. Thanks. Like, you know what I mean?
Crossbones, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, what? Don't just pick a random ass card and tell me to play to my deck. Come on now. But the other side to it, Cozy, is I thought like, okay, it works from 1 to 11 cards. So if I put like Darkhawk in, is it just going to use like Second Dinner's analysis and their stats to just give me the statistical best Darkhawk deck?
I think it's not going to just give you the statistical best. I think that's what I mean. It'll give you like you're the top 5%, not the top 1%. That or top 10, maybe not top 1. That's my guess. Because again, decks at the top tier players play are so sophisticated. They're not going to recommend those. They're going to recommend probably whatever that's like a great deck. It's going to say, hey, you should use Sentinel and Collector with Loki. You probably know Collector by then, but like you should use Sentinel and Mirage. Those help you get your little things. Devil Dinosaur. It's huge for pools 1, 2, and 3. Especially those that don't have complete collections. Dude, if smart decks launched with this game, good God, it would have been awesome.
It's a huge feature, and I wonder if it's the kind of feature that would help encourage some players to come back. Be like, hey, listen, you want to get started again, and like you're kind of out of tune with the meta. Well, this feature is going to let you kind of know what cards you have that can be the most competitive. I think that's pretty neat.
I think it does. I think it will bring casuals back more so than not. But I want to get my hands on it, but from what I just saw, the snippet on the trailer, it looked cool. It looked like it was doing its job,
Yeah, and it's notable as well, and you kind of touched on it briefly, but they did say in a question and answer that it's using a data science powered model based on your collection and the current meta to craft the deck. So it's taking the meta, which I'm assuming is going to be internal statistics from Second Dinner. They're not going to publicly source whatever garbage we're having. But they're going to use internal data, and then they're going to also kind of use like the actual personalized collection of the individual, which is huge because the whole premise of Marvel Snap initially was, hey, everyone has unique collections. I mean, that's not so much the case now. Like the players I play against in Infinity Conquest, I assume they have every single card, right? And most players do. It's not like, oh, they don't have Alioth, so they're not playing Alioth. No, they have Alioth, right? But like, I think there was something beautiful in the onset of Marvel Snap where it's like you're unlocking cards, you're playing these kind of like patched together decks that you're trying to experiment with, where like Magneto is like the best card you have. So you're fitting Magneto into every single deck you can. And then suddenly this tool is gonna say, oh, you got Magneto, you have this, or hey, you unlock Jane Foster early. Well, guess what? It works with these types of cards. That could be really interesting for players, especially when they're unlocking things during Pool 3.
Yeah, I'm curious, like if I put in Alioth and I create a deck, does it make me a new one each time? Does it make the same in a given time? You know what I mean? So that number one. But the other way I was thinking is like, I build all my own decks. I do all this, right? Like I'm not going to be using this as much as, maybe someone who's more casual. But you know what I love about it? Like kind of low key that I think is great. I don't know about you, but like deck codes are great. I get it. They're fine. But like, dude, whenever I'm like wanting to play Surfer and I'm like, all right, let me build it from scratch and find these cards. Like finding the cards sometimes is such a hassle. I love that I can go like Surfer, auto deck, slot these 4 out, put 4 more in, and I'm good to go. You know what I mean? It's going to help like kind of make deck building faster for the, not casual player as well.
That's actually a good point too, right? It kind of like kickstarts you when you're trying to design a deck. You're like, huh, yeah, I'm gonna make a Jane Foster Thor deck. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe. Oh, that's actually a pretty good point. You could also make kind of like interesting
combos.
You can kind of data mine where you're like, okay, can I make a Thor, Jane Foster kind of new negative deck? Right. Oh, I mean, that's literally what you just did.
Well, no, like Werewolf by Night, right. Jane, Thor, and Thor. Like, do those go together
exactly,
with Mjolnir? Yeah, exactly. I know what you're saying. Like, could it tell you some other great combos we're not thinking about? It'd be awesome.
Yeah, could you be like, okay, here's Hobgoblin, Ravonna, and Magneto, and it like pulls together this Kingpin deck that you're like, bro, look at this, oh my god, and you take it all the way the distance because it's incredible.
But also, you know what'd be so cool? It could be a video series we might both end up doing is Day 1 Sebastian Shaw Smart Deck recommendations. This is what it's saying, or is there not the data available? Like, you know what I mean? Like, does Second Dinner have the data of what they tested? And in that case, it'll be really interesting. And I don't know how that'll work. I kind of hope it says data not ready yet. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Because then
you hit the button, it's Glenn's best deck just shows up right, immediately dude? For everybody. Yeah.
It's like, okay, well that died. But no, I think it'd be cool to see like best Surfer smart decks and go through them and talk about them and then talk about cards you can flex out, things like that.
And you could even make an extension to that where like, for instance, let's say a player's like under 1500 collection level and they want to do Infinity Conquest. Wouldn't it be interesting if someone could like have an option be like, hey, you're new, you're under 1500 collection level. Would you like to use a smart deck for the Infinity Conquest? And you hit the button and you actually have, oh shit, look, I have Goliath. I have all these cards I have not been able to play before with my Infinity ticket, which I mean kind of makes so you can't just farm Infinity tickets anyway. They're hard enough to get. But the smart deck feature might give players who are just trying to even experiment with some of the more meta cards who might not have them yet. I think there's like some extensions to this which could be interesting because like Infinity Conquest is not a fair fight for someone with 1,000 collection level. But maybe this smart deck feature might be able to kind of soothe that a little bit. I don't know. I'm just thinking, I'm just snowballing. I think the feature has potential. But that's not the only thing that was discussed, Cozy. I think it's one of the most exciting. But we also have the emotes. The emotes I think are going to be exciting. I mean, how much could we possibly say about the emotes? I thought they were pretty damn good.
I just hope, like, it's a game at the end of the day, and, like, Galactus saying okay is fun. I think we're going to see loud people complain about them. And it's like, I don't know. I just don't think you should take it too seriously. I get they can be used in toxic ways. They're going to be toxic as all out. They're going to be, period, right? But also, it's like, just don't let yourself, like, don't let someone get your goat was like the term that I used to hear all the time, right? Like, just chill out, man. Play Marvel Snap. Like, I get it. You just lost 8 cubes and the guy's hitting you with an okay Galactus. But, like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, that's my personality. I get it. People are A, sensitive, and B, want to be vocal. But does that make sense?
No, it does make sense. And, like, listen, I suspect that a lot of people are just going to, like, this already happens. A lot of people auto-mute the player, which I think is kind of sad, honestly. You know what one of my favorite things in Marvel Snap is right now? It really makes me happy. In Proving Grounds, when you snap and they snap back and both players fist bump.
Oh, that's great.
That's humanity at its finest. Like, that makes me so happy. I know it's like an unreasonably happy response. I'm like, you know what, man? I want to lose. Yeah. I want to lose for you because like I'm just so happy right now. And like that, I think there's so many times where I'll have like a long match of like Conquest. And when I lose, even if I lose, I fist bump. And when that fist bump comes back, I don't know. It just makes me happy. I like the sportsmanship that like you can be competitive, but you can have sportsmanship. And I think that you miss that sometimes if you auto mute, and it's one of the only ways we have to communicate with the person on the other side. And so I think it's a shame that it gets muted as often as it does, because obviously it's used to such toxic effect all the time.
And this is going to allow so much more communication of like small ways without a chat, right? Like talking to your opponent and saying, okay, and who knows, man, if they let you have like 20 different emotes, it's like, dude, there's so many ways you can kind of like talk, which I think is fun in a way too, without directly talking. You know what I think? I've seen a lot of, comments like, oh, it's just, they're definitely going to monetize these. Like, yeah, no crap. Like, that is why they're here. You know what I mean? Like, but what I would love to see is if with these coming out, it would ultimately mean that there's less super expensive bundles, because this is another way to kind of relieve that pressure valve of making, money. But I also want to see them introduced in ways, this is a win for everything. I think it's a win for people that want to buy these, but it's also a win for if they're in the season pass, or if they are earned in the next thing we're going to talk about in albums, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's like collecting a set. We'll make it easy and call it Venomized, right? So there's Venomized. That's tough because there's a lot of them, but, we'll keep it simple. And then if you collect that set, you get a reward, whether that's, I think it was a Spotlight Key, a unique variant, which is awesome. What else? Like credits and gold, I get it that's there too.
I'm not sure. They did mention a couple things, but they very specifically did say that emotes were part of those packages as well, I believe.
Yes, and so that is one way. Now, I heard in the OTA, did they say like the ones that launch will have XYZ? They better launch with retroactive variants. Like the variants we've bought already better count towards these for sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of question marks here. We obviously don't know what packages are being offered. I think they said that the albums are they 12 cards? 12 card albums?
I think in the
Did
first
I read
set
that correctly?
Coming out, yeah.
Yeah, so 12 cards, and then there'll be like collection of. I think Venomize is a perfect example, right? And that's going to be one of them. It has to be, right? I wonder if you'll have specific artist ones too. That could be potentially.
Yeah, but
one?
This is awesome to me. Like to me, this is perfect, and it adds collecting, which I love because imagine now there was no point to get the Venomized Baron Mordo, but if that's the last thing you need to get a unique Venom, right? You get a Venom that nobody has unless you have all of the Venom ones, and that's kind of your goal, right? Like everyone plays Marvel Snap different. I think this adds to the collectors, and it adds a new incentive to collect variants, right? Rather than just like, hey, I have my 19th Black Widow.
I get what you're saying, but like there is the potential to troll people so hard. I know what you just said. You're gonna buy a Venomized Baron to finish the kit. Imagine. There's 12 cards of Venomized. They release a 1,200 gold, like, Venomized Baron. You have 11 of the 12, and you're staring at the shop. You're like, I got to spend 1,200 gold on this Baron because I want to get the exclusive rewards. Like, that is so trolly. I don't know if they could do that, man.
Yeah, no, totally, man. I think there's going to be, like, expensive albums and then, like, not so much, right? Like, this Hellfire is definitely going to be one. Like, it's out for one day. The new variants is definitely going to be one. And that is... Literally, it's like a gala. It's meant to be for the like, you know, the whales, essentially, right? And so that's why they're only coming for one day, exclusive. So, again, I think there's good, there's bad. Ultimately, it's going to make them money. That's why they're doing it. But I do think it's really cool to add different reasonings to get variants and continue to build on, in my opinion, one of the coolest pieces of Snap, right?
I have a hot take.
Okay.
Could it be that the rewards for these albums are potentially the mythic variants?
I think mythic variants are dead, I thought.
They're dead? They're not doing them anymore? I thought that was a thing.
I don't know. Maybe they are. I can't keep track because I'm still waiting for my ultimate variants at this point. But yeah, I mean...
That's true.
I think, I think they've stated, and I saw something from like a tournament site that got like announced early. It's like, it had like a Juggernaut, and there's like a Juggernaut variant. There's a Spotlight key, which people are mad at. I think it's fine. Like if you happen to have the set, you get a Spotlight key. Cool. Like, you know, whatever. You know, whales are going to rejoice from that. I'm kind of sad they're not having like a bunch come out at once. I think it's like the first set. It's like, dude, release a bunch of sets, and then that way people like you who have like, you know, 100 variants, you can update your game, and all of a sudden you're like, whoa, I just got 7 Spotlight keys, 6 new variants in this because I already had these variants that unlocked whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and if the variants are worth something in these kits, like I'm sitting on almost 600 collector's reserves. So like if unlocking 700 gold variants will actually help me like finish these kits or finish these albums, then all of a sudden that makes the reserves theoretically a little more valuable, at least, because maybe you know, I'll actually pull variants that like are useful in these albums.
Yep.
I just hope the albums aren't like stacked with like, hey, you need to collect 12 ultimate variants. Well, it's like, well, you know what I mean? It's like we don't even have enough tokens. But that would be cool if that was one of them.
That's what I'm saying.
But it can't be like the only one.
All collectors need the prize, the ring, the one ring in Magic, right? Like you need to have levels. And I'm fine. Say what you will. The people that love to farm negativity are going to do it. But there needs to be the one to collect them all. And then there needs to be the easy sport variants. So, you know what I mean? Like both 700s and the rares. I think I'm good with both.
You know, it's because you own almost every variant in the game, and they're all gold split crackled. I mean, I wasn't going to say it, but at the start of this podcast, you had an absolutely filthy Ultron. I was like so jealous of it. I could barely even like get the words talking at the start of the podcast. It was so nice. The Kim Jacinto gold sparkled. I was like, you kidding me? Dude. Unbelievable. Yeah. So Cozy, you are well prepared for this new system with the albums, aren't you?
I'm ready. I'll be able to tell people immediately what you're going to be able to get from it. That's for damn sure. And you know, it's what got me falling in love with Snap was the variants and like the uniqueness. I think it's I love Infinity avatars, and even more so I love the new variant avatars because you can express. Dude, I've got a freaking Infinity Border Shadow King pixelated. Nobody's having that. I love that like people want to know if they're facing me. There you go. That's it right there. And I think adding to that uniqueness is definitely cool now that splits have become less rare.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I have a question though. Do you have an Infinity Border Coulson pixel yet?
Like for an avatar?
Yeah.
Dude, getting those avatars are so damn rare. So I don't I haven't been off. Oh, dude, if I had the Coulson, I won Infinity Conquest. I think I've won 4 already. I've used them all in pixel avatars. But I've
and
not
the Rock,
done,
of course.
The Rock, yeah. Well, no, just this season I've done 4 new ones, and so I've done So this season I've done the Pixel Shadow King. I've done the Psylocke that was the Psylocke that came up. I did the Sword Master, which I thought was pretty spicy. I got a cool Sword Master, and then the new Doctor Strange I thought was cool. The new art kind of water one, but anyway, yeah. So listen, I think the small updates are nice flavor touches in this season as people are going to be playing a bit more Snap in December. And overall, should be a big dubs.
Cozy, we're now at our mailbag, one of my absolute favorite things that we do now on a weekly basis. So if you have a question for us, get into the comment section down below, put mailbag in caps, ask your question, and we'll be getting to as many as we can each week. And if we didn't get to yours, make sure you ask again. We'll be going through each week. Now, Cozy, question number 1 comes from Lori Brian Ramirez. And the question is, what is worse, martyr or elephants? Cozy, I'll let you start.
Ooh, I mean, it's easy for me. It's martyr, right? It's almost a new question for you as of this Snapchat. Is it martyr, elephants, or Christmas? What do you hate the most?
You know what? I think that elephants are a little clunkier than martyr. They're just like, their feet are really, really big. They're really clumsy. But ultimately, I think that Last Christmas I Gave You My Heart, I don't even know the title of the song. That is by far the worst. If I had to rank them, so the Last Christmas song is the worst, followed by Martyr, and then Elephants.
I can't wait to hear your Christmas movie rankings. I can't wait you're going to be putting like some just garbage. If Home Alone's not top tier, I'm going to lose it. Yeah, listen, I also want to say this for listeners, viewers as well. I feel like we don't have any jingles in our podcast. You know what I mean? I listen to podcasts and I hear if somebody who's an audio guy out there can come up with a sweet mail time intro, dude, I would love, you know what I mean? Like a little mail time. That's
a good idea.
The challenge is out there. My DMs will be open in Twitter. Wanted to throw that out. But anyway, yes, it for me, martyr, elephant, hater over there, Alex. I would love to be able to track your hate for elephants like on an app. So we should have that. What's the next question for the mailbag?
Next question is from Stuff, and they're asking, assuming the devs reversed every nerf they've ever done to date, what do you think would be the most dominant deck, we'll say, or card in Marvel Snap?
It's tough. With beta too, like negative was a 4/4, so that was obviously like busted as all hell. So like that's where I want to go is like, oh, negative. But honestly, with the forecast that we have today, with the forecast that we have right now, it has to be the Zabu that came out. It has to be because of the new cards we've gotten.
No, and without question, the original Zabu was absolutely insane. -2 power cost. It's crazy. Like, when you think back to the beta days, there was the time where, like, Nova was absolutely insane, where it gave +2, right? And then you also had Devil Dinosaur. I don't even remember the stat line. Was it a 3 cost? A 4 cost? It wasn't even a 5/3. It was something way better.
Dude, there's been so many nerfs that if you brought them back, like Lockjaw, the Thanos deck was insane. Shuri with power anywhere would be the Galactus nowadays with a Ravonna deck and a lot, like there's so many, but I'm just telling you, man, the Zabu 4s, I couldn't imagine the lockdown. If you think you hated lockdown now, you had Spider-Man in there with like Alliance, and it would be terrible. It'd be awful.
Yeah, I was even thinking about like Death Wave, like traditional Death Wave. Do you remember that with like She-Hulk, Death? Yeah, Leader, the original Leader. What's crazy about Leader, you're bringing back in time. Leader sat like untouched for like all of beta, all the 3 first months of launch. And it wasn't until like December, this time last year. Yep. Everyone's like, wow, Leader's ruining everything. Leader Leech, look at this. What happened?
It's because everyone just got to pull 3 red around then. They did, I think it was December 1st. They did like Destroyer, Angela, and Bishop. And then they're like, all right, see you after the holidays. And everyone lost Angela that they were playing. And then they were like, oh, this Leader fella is kind of cracked. And then, it all went downhill fast. So that's a tough question. But yeah, for me, my solid answer has got to be Zabu.
Yeah, and I mean, a good fallback would be the original Shuri too. Was still insane with like the original Red Skull and all that stuff, right? But even then, Vision wasn't as strong as Vision is now. Vision got buffed, believe it or not. So hey, pretty interesting. Good conversation there. This next question from Jovenshire, I like this one a lot. How does Cozy make all of his animated graphics assets? Those transitions are great. And I love following along with you while you do your deck breakdowns. Now, Cozy, I'm giving you a chance to flex here because I know that you pay like a million editors absolutely tremendous salaries to do all your graphical work. Cozy, how do you do it?
Listen, it's less of how because it's a boring answer. Like, hey, After Effects, with more of like the 1-2. I guess that's a fun question. I appreciate that. Again, say what you will, but I look up to the GOATs. Tom Brady. You got Mr. Beast. And Mr. Beast, his philosophy is make every video better than the last. And, I look back at things I did a year ago. I'm like, well, that's super cringe. So, like, for me, I'm like, okay, how can I continue to one-up it? And then it's ideation, right? Ideation, coming up with ideas, how to present it, and, like, timeliness. So I used to do flex options and give you guys 10 flex options because people didn't have all the cards. And then I kind of adapted, right? And then I used to do a turn-by-turn that was super sophisticated. And I was like, people who watch for the most part don't need it this dialed in, so it's like a middle ground, and that's kind of where I landed, where the videos are at today. So listen, it just, I'm obsessed with what I do. I love making content. That's why I'll never get an editor. I love editing. I love creating a movie. I have always done that and always will. Right now it's Marvel Snap, but this is something I hope to do, forever.
And one thing I'm going to say, as someone who is a content creator themselves, I can confirm with each and every one of you out there that it's as hard as it looks to do what Cozy does. Like, I'm telling you, there's a reason why, like, you're not, like, there's that saying, right? Often imitated, never replicated. You don't even get imitated because it's impossible. It's just so, like, your standard is so high that people are like, I ain't doing that. I can't get there, right?
Oh,
so, like, dude, I'm just saying that I want to take this time to really just appreciate like why you're the go to Snap. It's like because you put in the effort, you put in the time, you got the skill, you got the talent, but you have the commitment to make the best content possible.
Amen.
And I think that's what that question is coming through too.
Well, yeah, I mean, it means a lot. I'm always gonna look at myself as just another creator in the bunch, but for me, it's sacrifice, man. You gotta, if you truly want to do something, you gotta love it. You gotta love it enough to go into it. So it means a lot. I know I've given up a lot to try to get better and better each day, and I didn't. People think you start at like, guys, my first video, again, I've talked about it. I didn't have a mic plugged in. I was reading a script, looking up the entire time, and I looked like I've never talked to anybody in my life. So you got to start somewhere, bud. But thank you for that. I appreciate it. I'm bad with compliments. I don't know what to say, but thank you.
Of course, buddy. We'll close it off with two quick ones here. One from Edwin. Interesting question. Why don't patch notes get released a week early? The patch notes can't change due to the App Store approval process, so why withhold the information? This is, I guess a lot of games will give patch notes in advance. I know like Diablo 4 did that with like, hey, this is what's changing next week. Why do you think Marvel Snap doesn't?
A, because it's weekly patch notes, so like it's pretty rare. So the gaming industry doesn't have that usually. B, I think the thing is rather than patch notes coming out early, things can change at the last minute. We know that for a fact, and we've seen that. I would say a test server would probably be more imperative, and then you can see what is being tested out there, and then things cannot be broken, things like that. I think that's another conversation. But mainly because, dude, there's a million things that can happen, and they can change their mind on a moment's notice, I guess. Even if they're locked in, they still have the ability to pull it, right? So they may decide at the last second, hey, this felt like something we needed to do, but we're going to yank it. But if that info's out there, it's out there. And people already react strong enough to data mines. God forbid that as well, right? So probably, I think that would be the answer. I don't know. I can't speak for the devs.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know anything about game development at all. And I guess what you're talking about is like exactly what the Firestar situation was, right?
Yeah.
They had to be responsive. Like that's a perfect example. If they're releasing all their notes way in advance, then they don't have the flexibility to kind of back off it, right? And you're right. Also, people are taking data mines as gospel truth half the time. So it's important that they have the opportunity to be flexible. And
I know I was gonna just say I used to content create for a Disney game, and I know like, Disney has to sign off on 1 billion things for every character. Like I know that for a fact. I've talked to those teams. So like if the Baymax wasn't represented the right way, it'd be like pull it, right? So like there's things that happen, dude. We don't know anything. You know what I mean? I think people see things as black and white, but we don't know. Maybe it was Firestar was broken. Who knows, right?
Absolutely. And the final question of the Snapchat today is, do you have any worries that the game will run out of interesting characters from the Marvel Universe to turn into cards? And that's from Matt.
No. My worries for Marvel Snap are far from now, years from now, but card development, design ain't one of them.
Yeah, I think there's like a huge well of characters. And I think even coming in January, is it Meek? Who I just saw, like I was watching, it's like he's the Cork's friend, isn't he? Little Meek.
Yeah.
I was like, oh look, they can make Meek a character. They probably make so many smaller side characters cards as well. So I think that they're probably more limited on their imagination on different card effects than they are the actual characters themselves. So
yeah, we've gotten to a point too where it's like I don't think we care. You know what I mean? Like Iron Lad is Iron Lad at this point, and we know him from that. Jeff is Jeff. Noel is Noel. I didn't know these guys beforehand. I knew a lot of them, but I didn't know all of them. And I think it's the suction that gets you in from the Marvel perspective with Wolverine, and then you're like, oh, they're kind of all cool. And now I love characters like Arrow. I got tagged a million times. They're bringing Arrow to the MCU. I'm like, sign me up.
whoa, they are?
Yeah. Hey, I know. I needed a minute.
I didn't know that.
I know. I found out, and I just kind of walked out my house, looked at the sunset, thanked the maker, and just took a nice long walk and prepped
You got
myself.
really emotional. I can see that.
Broke down. Yeah. Broke down in tears. So we'll have to come back to that subject when we release. They better cast her well. But anyway, yes, I think that Marvel is such a huge universe. It's like Star Wars. They both just have incredible things to pull from. And then even if you don't know it, you end up loving it because it's just a cool IP.
Absolutely. And there's so many stories to be told in comics and, of course, in the MCU as well. There's no shortage of characters. And I think they've actually answered that question before. I think there's been a Q&A about that. They're like, nope, we don't think that's going to be a problem at all. Yeah. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for all of your support of both Cozy and I's content. We really appreciate it. We hope you enjoyed this week's Snapchat. Until the next week, happy snapping.